Hello and welcome to episode 19 of my mostly stock career. You can tell we're in the VAB this time, and we're actually going somewhere. We're going to be taking Bill, and because Stelina's almost there, we're going to be taking her as well to the moon and just doing a quick landing. Because let's step in the astronaut complex. If we mouse over Bill, we can see that he's almost ranked up, and we need him to be level 3, if you remember. So you can see he's got some experience for orbiting the sun, orbiting Minmus, and Kerbin, but he's never orbited the moon, which will probably be worth 2 experience, and he's never landed on the moon, which I believe one of our people have. Well, landed on Minmus is worth 6, so maybe the moon's worth 4, but I think that 6 experience should be more than enough to rank him up. If not, then we'll probably have to go and land him on Minmus, or do a flyby of Minmus. Either one could work, I suppose. Anyhow, we're going to be moving Bill, and because Stelina is so close, we want to rank her up too. That's why we have a ship that's good for 2 people. Now these 2 are going to go on our Rover, so we're going to go to launch pad first. But these 2 guys, these 2 Kerbals, are going to be going on our Rover to Duna. Of course, that thing's going to be transferred on its own stage, or its own system, I should say. So it's not going with our main stage, but we are going to take care of the Rover today. So we're just going to spend a little bit of time getting these guys their experience, and once these guys have ranked up, then we're going to take the Rover out. We're going to add a couple solar panels to it, because I don't think it has any power generation as of current, and we do need to fix that. So once we've added some power generation to it, we're going to stick it in a big fairing and launch it off. But first, like I said, we're going to get to the Rover. We need to get these guys some experience, so we're just taking them out on a small rover, or on a small aircraft, and aircraft, rocket, lander, a lot of words for it. But we're going to be taking them to a quick mission to the moon, since we haven't even been to the moon in quite a while. And I don't think we have any contracts, though, so too bad. I'm sure, however, if we did actually go and check out the contracts, there might be one like plant a flag on the moon, but it'd be only like 150,000 funds, which would be insignificant compared to basically how much stuff we've already launched, since we've already probably launched around 1 million to 1.5 million funds worth of rockets into space in the last couple of episodes. And here we have our touchdown, and I'm actually surprised, since we kind of landed on the engine there, that the engine didn't break off, but luckily it survived so that we can bring these people back home. There was a moment where I was questioning whether or not I'd actually have enough Delta V for this, but it does have just enough, which works out really well. So we're going to grab Bill here, and we're just going to hop him out and plant a flag, because this is pretty significant. He's going to level up, Stelina's going to level up, and they're both going to become more experienced Kerbals, since they, of course, neither of them have never been to the moon. And of course, I always manage to get the flag orientation wrong, so it's backwards as usual. And then I discovered that I actually had some science I didn't collect. I had assumed that I'd already picked up a lot of the science, but I figured why not just check and try it out. But we get another 120 science from a surface sample that we did not pick up previously. And then of course we bring Bill back. Now, here's a thing that we talked about some in a previous episode, and we're just going to quickly kind of go over it again. If you look at the map, which I'll open up here in a second, then you can look at where I am, and if you notice, almost straight out is where I need to go to get back to Kerbin, because of course that's burning in the clockwise direction. Basically it would lower our orbit, but it's not quite directly out. So that means west, and I didn't turn SAS on, so there's a big kind of leap. It's west, and then mostly up. So mostly up with just kind of a tinge in the west direction, which is where I'm pointing at right now with my nav ball. And you can see that we're just efficiently burning the exact way we need to go. So even though we only have about 600, or about 700 total when we were landed, units of Delta V, we're able to get back to Kerbin. Because if you notice, our periapsis is currently at the middle of that orbit once we leave the moon's sphere of influence, which means we keep burning in the exact direction we're burning in to make our periapsis go down most efficiently. If that periapsis or the apoapsis was not in the very middle, then that burn would be a little less efficient. But the fact that it was in the middle means that the same direction is the most efficient, because you're kind of burning based on that when you're still in the moon's sphere of influence. So it's a pretty standard deorbit. I was going to drop off this stage, but I was afraid it was going to hit me since it was I couldn't control it well enough to actually kind of fling it to the side like I normally have done. And also the heating effects started lighting up, which must be a sign of the new heating effects, how they tweaked it a little bit. Squad tweaked them in 1.03 or 1.04, whichever one was. I think 1.04 was just a hotfix to something. But 1.03 that added some new heat things and different balances, I'm guessing changed up the re-entry effects, because I've noticed they're a little more dangerous now. So we stage off of that when we kind of flip the wrong way. Deploy a couple parachutes. I just wanted to check if I could, because I kind of wanted to land on the actual land, but it didn't work out. The parachutes actually tell you now when it is safe and unsafe to deploy them. So that's a good thing to keep in note, that you can just right click on the parachute and it'll say safe, risky, or unsafe, in which case you shouldn't deploy it, otherwise it'll be ripped off. And there we go, we are approaching the very final stage of landing, where we're just going to touch down after quite a ways of just falling with those parachutes. And there we have it. Let's recover this, and well, we did get some science, but let's see how much experience we got. Hopefully we leveled up Bill, who's our real target here. We got about 120 science because we apparently didn't do a surface sample from the moon, but we picked it up now. There we go. Bill is now level 3. That's what we wanted to see. So let's go to the astronaut complex, and we can see he can repair landing legs now, but apparently we needed him level 3 to repair the rover wheels, so he's all good now, and we even have a higher level scientist for what we need. So we're doing well. Let's go take a look at the rover to make sure that it does have some kind of power generation, because like I said, I think I forgot solar panels on it. So it would be a good idea to load it up and check it out. So let's see, we have ladder, we have plenty of batteries, we have the drills and the ore tanks, and it is indeed missing a solar panel, or a couple solar panels. So since we have a couple of drills, how about we stick some solar panels on this thing? Now, probably right in the front wouldn't be a bad spot. I'm just trying to find a not too intrusive place to stick these. I suppose they could go with the parachutes, possibly. Or they could just kind of go on this front bit. Yeah, I think this is where I'm going to set them. I just want to angle it a little bit, or nah, it should be fine. Here, let's put them on. I don't like how it's clipping with that. I don't know if that would really affect anything, but we will just move this around a little bit and kind of set it flush with it. There we go. Now we have a couple of solar panels on, and they will do just fine the way they are. And these are empty. Yes, they are. Just, you know, making sure this rover is good to go. And I think that it is finally good to go and good, all set. So one thing I want to do before I forget is I want to reinforce these drills a little bit, because they are kind of flimsy. So I just want to make sure that they are nice and secure by, of course, attaching a couple more struts to them. That way, if anything hits the drills, then it'll also be attached to these parts, so instead of the drill immediately taking the centerpiece off, it'll have to apply the force in more places, basically making it much more sturdy. So this rover's good to go, and the way we're going to be launching it is with this docking port back here. So what we need is a couple of these. Let me think. Actually, no. What we'll do is we will hit save, and we're going to make this thing a sub-assembly so that we can put it in the space plane, or the VAB. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our root tool, say that this part is connected to the root, and now that the docking port's the root, we're going to drop it in the subassembly, and we're just going to call this the Duna Miner Rover. Hit save, confirm overwrite. Overwrite? I didn't know we already saved this thing as a subassembly. Alright then. Now that it's a subassembly, how about we leave the spaceplane hangar and go to the VAB, because we're going to be launching it from the VAB in a big rocket. Now I already explored the idea of making it so this rover was taken up by a plane, a space plane, but it turns out the rover has too much drag on its own, so it becomes very difficult to truly attempt that. So let's see. Let's just use this as our fairing base to kind of check this thing out. And immediately on this, what we're going to need is a nice big fairing. I actually don't think we're going to need a 3.5 meter. I think a 2.5 meter might work just fine. We will ignore building it for now, and we will just do this. And then grab our subassembly of the rover. Dock it there, because we can undock that anytime we want. And now we can actually take a look at this thing. So apparently we can't retract that ladder. That's a bit strange. Alright, so this is our rover. It's got the solar panel addition, so it's all set to go. Let's see if we can't just build a fairing around this thing. So let's see. Actually, it looks like it will work. So if we just build outwards and then straight up. And there we go. Now we have the 3.75 meter fairing. It's still a bit strange and oblong shaped, but now there's at least 0 clipping, so it should be a bit nicer. And now that we put that probe piece in there, what we can do is I want to redefine the root part of this. So I'm going to call it that probe thing. And we'll just say that this is attached to it. That way we can remove this and we can actually just start building the rocket right underneath. So let's grab 3 of these to start and just give ourselves an idea on what this thing's thrust to weight ratio will be with our massive engine. So it's actually quite good right now. Maybe we won't go with this. Let us check out this engine. And this engine has over 4K delta V, which means that the current setup of this rocket has enough delta V to get to min-miss if we can at least get it to space. So if we use one of those quad nozzle rockets with a few more of these large fuel tanks, we'll probably have enough thrust to weight ratio and enough fuel to get this thing into space. So that way we can of course then transfer over to Duna later using this stage that we currently have up here. Now I'm going to make one last adjustment to the rover. It doesn't have any SAS, and when I'm landing it I need it to be oriented a certain way, so I'm just going to stick 4 of these small inline reaction wheels so it has tons of SAS just on top of the fuel tanks. It doesn't add much space, kind of counterbalances with the engines, and it's going to help it significantly in its landing procedure. Now that we have our rover all set up and ready to go, it's time to launch, and launch we shall. The single largest vessel that we are actually launching on camera. Now, I think that my 2 fuel haulers were actually a bit larger, or at least on par with this size, so I can't necessarily say that this is the largest one I've launched in the career, but it's definitely the largest one I've launched while showing. So how about we go over something that's kind of interesting about some of these really heavy launches as I try to talk over the super loud rockets. Now, when you're doing really large launches like this, it's actually a really good idea to make them have a lot of thrust to weight ratio, because since they're so heavy, it's very easy to get stuck hovering just above the atmosphere. and not actually, or just above the surface and not actually gaining any altitude. And when you're not gaining any altitude, what happens to you is you actually waste huge, I mean absolutely massive quantities of fuel just hovering and slowly gaining speed. So the faster you can gain speed, the better off you are, especially the larger the rocket you have. Now, I actually need to cut throttle, otherwise I'm going to lose control of this because my rocket is pulling away because of the drag. So I'm going to throttle down. I just did it really quickly so I didn't lose control. And I'll throttle back up so I can, of course, regain gimbal and stability. So now we're basically just about out of the atmosphere, which means we can cut out this fairing soon. We'll do it just after we actually lose this bottom stage of rockets, since we are technically still in the atmosphere. If we look at this, we can actually see what the amount is. Oh, we should have been able to see it. Maybe in vessel? Nah. Okay, so it's time to drop off these 4 large tanks. Hopefully this goes smoothly. Hopefully it goes smoothly. And I'm going to say it went smoothly because we didn't actually lose anything, so that's good enough for me. And our apoapsis is actually at 90k right now, 90 kilometers. So we're just going to zoom up until we're out in space, and then we'll drop this fairing. Now, I looked at the numbers in the VAB. This fairing is responsible for 400 meters per second of delta V, all by itself. Just doing that saves 400 to 500 units of delta V. For the last stage anyway. This upper stage, it's going to save even more because it wasn't meant to actually be dropped off this early. It was supposed to be opened up once this stage was out. So, there's our rover. We had to do a lot of extra strutting that we're going to leave there until we actually get to Duna. That way we have plenty to go off from. And if we look at our delta V, we should have another 1600 in this stage and another 4k in the next stage, which will make it so that we have plenty to get to orbit and plenty to get to Duna, since Duna should only take us a couple hundred to get to and maybe another 1,000 or so to decelerate. But we'll have to see. How about we actually get to orbit around Kerbal first off? So here we are in orbit around Kerbal, and to be realistic, if you do go to Duna at the most efficient transfer window, you can probably get away with getting to Duna with, I want to say, about 1200 to 1300 delta V to get there, and I'm not entirely sure how much to get an encounter with it to actually circularize or match your velocity. If you aerobrake, of course, it would be much less, but that would be most efficient. Now, I did say I didn't really care where Duna was, but that was when it was still ahead of me. Now that Duna is behind me, transferring to it is almost impossible, so I'm actually going to have to wait a while to get Duna in a better position so that I can transfer to it. Although I'm probably not going to wait for the most efficient position. And it is many days of waiting. Actually, that probe that has the thermometer on it, we might want to take a small detour once it gets close to Sol. Or to Kerbal, not Sol. And the reason we want to do this is it has a thermometer on it, and we might be able to send a little bit of scientific data from low in Kerbal's orbit. Whoa, what is going on here? Time accelerate. That fixes everything always. So, I want to point out our orbit. It is, in fact, very impressive. Yeah, 2,917,799,516 meters per second. What does that look like? A line straight away from the sun. I'm not sure why. It's so extreme. Let's go back, I guess. So we're not going to be doing any scientific data from that, at least none that's going to prove to be significant for us. So let's just do some more waiting. Of course, at a million time warp, so that it doesn't take so long. And it's still taking quite a while. It's actually taking a very significant amount of time. I wonder how many contracts are going to expire on us during this instance. Ah, well, I'll be back when we're actually at the right transfer window. Alright, so we're about in position. A good way to kind of estimate when you're in about maneuver, or about the efficient transfer window to Duna, is if you just kind of take a top-down view of the Kerbal, the sun here, and you just kind of make it so that you're directly to the right of it, then when Duna's basically just about above you, that means you're just about at the transfer window. So you can see it's just about above us, which means it's close enough for us to actually begin our transfer. So let's zoom in and figure out where we are. And it appears as though we have some things missing. By things missing, I particularly mean our Duna rover that we just launched. And by just launched, I mean like 2 years ago we launched. Holy cow. Oh my. I just want to point out something that I've noticed that I find to be quite silly, that I can't get a good angle on. So there's a flag down there. It's quite impressive. So apparently that probe that we tried to switch to, it has apparently obliterated the world. Can we enter any structure and fix this? Okay, so the thing we just launched isn't there anymore. So it looks like the weird bug is fixed, but our launcher, our rover, still has managed to disintegrate itself. Now, I was just looking around, and I have noticed something I'm not too happy with. That is, Bill and Stelina have been killed in action. Both of them have died. Even though we had safely launched them into a stable orbit before time accelerating, and then there was all of the weird bugs that apparently killed them. So I'm not too happy about the fact that they died, and I have no idea how Malin died. I'm not entirely sure who Malin was. I remember rescuing her, but I don't know what craft she was on, so I don't know where or when she died, since I know she was not missing beforehand, unless we did lose her. So we were going to transfer this thing, but due to circumstances, we're going to do something else. Now, I had quick-saved on the moon way back when Bill and Stelina were still in this thing, because I was just playing it safe in case I traversed in the wrong direction to get back home. So, here I am. I am all the way back here, and I don't want these two to die unnecessarily for some weird bug. So, what we're going to do is I'm just going to bring them back again. And instead of actually showing it all over, I'm just going to get to where we were. I'm going to get the rover back in space. I'm going to get these guys back and leveled up. And I'm probably going to launch the refueler type thing. The hauler that's going to be able to haul fuel from the surface of Duna, from the refinery, or we might even just put it on Ike if it's easier. But we will definitely move it, basically. We'll get a hauler so that we can start hauling fuel, and I'll probably get that up into Kerbal orbit. And next episode, episode 20, what we're going to do is we will actually just transfer everything all that episode. So, anyway, I thank you guys for watching. Unfortunately, some weird bug hit us, but I'll see you next time. This is PTT GRW signing out.